Welcome to the What You Don't Know podcast, brought to you by the Know Like Trust Report, which is a simple, actionable survey that asks the most important questions. I'm Teresa Nichols, and I am honored to have our guests today. It's the first time we've had a couple on the show, which is really, really fun. Brandon and Ren Jett. And the main focus of today's podcast interview is their time running their online business that was called Sleuth Kings. So Brandon and Ren, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you so very much. And give me a little bit of background on what Sleuth Kings was and how you came up with this idea to do this.
So Sleuth Kings was essentially an interactive mystery subscription box. And basically what that means is every month we would send customers a case file, and it would have puzzles, clues, little trinkets, anything you need to solve the mystery. And when they received that case file, they would then email back and forth with the detective in order to solve the case each month. And so it was a ton of fun to put together each month and watch this thing grow. And we got into it because, to make a long story short, I used to like to mess with my boss at my first day job. And I would password protect different documents I had to send to him and make little puzzles that he would have to solve in order to open up the documents.
Nice.
And he hated it. I loved it and thought it was fun. And so I kept doing it. And then the idea kind of evolved from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we both
Love
really
that.
like puzzles, and we both kind of like to do things that keep us entertained. So this was definitely something that we both enjoyed, and I'm a huge Nancy Drew fan, and so those games that come out for Nancy Drew, they're always like puzzle filled. So we were like, we think that we can make this work. We think that we can make something like this work and bring some excitement and adventure to people's lives.
That's really cool. And how long did it run?
We ran it for 8 years, and it was actually doing really well. When we decided to close it down, it was just, I'll be honest, I kind of felt like, okay, I've told the story I wanted to tell. It's really run its course, and I'd like to creatively end it and move on to something else before you don't want to jump the shark. It's better to end it with some integrity rather than milk it too long.
Okay.
And so that was ultimately why we decided to call it quits on that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, kind of like a sitcom. You want to end it when it's doing really well and not like after it tanks. Yeah, okay. That's smart.
Exactly.
Well, in the 8 years that you ran it, did you get feedback from people that helped it evolve, or what was kind of the communication between you and the customer, and was there any really interesting feedback that came from
Yeah, we got the entire business evolved due to feedback. And so case 1 that we put out was very, very different from case 6, which was then very different from case 10. But the first 3 really were a totally different format, because a lot of that stuff, the documents weren't intricately designed. It was just, okay, this is the story, and these are the puzzles, and it was a much simpler type of thing. And initially we'd had something set up so that, okay, each time you solve a case, you get some points that you can then trade in for physical merchandise. And we listened to some of the early reviews and customer feedback, be it on websites or people emailing us directly, or Facebook groups that we were involved with for this. And we listened to the feedback of, this was fun, but, we wish that at first the detective had a built-in delay, for instance, where, okay, let me look into this. I'll get back to you in 5 minutes, because it was meant to make it more realistic, this guy that you're working back and forth with. People didn't like that because they're like, that breaks the flow of the gameplay. We get that you're going for realism, but we don't want to sit here twiddling our thumbs for 5 minutes. That makes total sense.
Okay.
I can take that out right now. He'll say, I'll get back to you shortly, and then 10 seconds later, he gets back to you. And so it was a lot of compromising there. People weren't into the points in the merchandise. So instead, we changed it up so that every 6 cases you completed, you got another secret mystery that helped further the story along.
Wow, that's
About
cool.
the kind of a subplot of the detective's missing dad. And so people really loved that, and that
What?
helped with customer retention and everything else. And so it was a lot of, you had to listen to feedback, and not all feedback that you got from customers was good, because oftentimes, we get emails, hey, I loved this case. This was the best one you've ever put out, we'd have a customer say. And then on that same case, I get another email, hey, what was this trash? This is the worst thing you've ever put out. Why did I pay money for this? And it's like, okay, well, let me really not take any of this to heart. Instead, let's sit down, and I would have her sit down and read through it with me too. And what can we actually take away from what they're saying? Well, it sounds like, and you could back and forth with people a little bit. Like, I'm so sorry you didn't enjoy it. What was it you didn't enjoy, so that I can improve in the
Yeah,
future?
that's so great.
And you could take little bits and pieces of, okay, they really wanted something designed a little bit more. They really didn't want to wait on the detective to get back to them. This type of story, this type of mystery doesn't really appeal to our target demographic. That's great to know. I'll never do this type of story again. People really liked weird monster Halloween horror type of stories, I learned. And so, okay, great. Let's focus on putting out more stuff in that genre. And so it was just a lot of really trying to pay attention, and what people tell you and the feedback they give you isn't always necessarily straightforward and upfront, and what they sometimes think they want and what they're actually telling you are two different things. And so you have to be able to objectively look at it and say, okay, this is helpful. This is what they're actually enjoying about it, or what they actually dislike, and figure out how you can then incorporate that into things in the future, because it doesn't help you for that case that they already got and they
Right.
worked through. Instead, okay, how can I make this better moving forward?
We
That's
did a lot of
really
things. Like
awesome.
we joined a lot of Facebook groups that kind of were centered around mysteries, or a lot of like thriller books. Or there actually eventually were communities that even were centered around mystery boxes. When we launched, we were the third. Well, we were the third one on the market. There's one that had been out before us, and one launched the same month that we did. So there really wasn't much to go on as far as like, what have other people done? How have they attained success?
Yeah,
So we really tried to listen to the people who were going to be playing the game, and we tried to kind of get involved any way that we could to get as much feedback as we could early on. We learned pretty quickly that, like, at first we had sent things to people in like envelopes, but they didn't like that because they wanted a tracking number. So I mean, pretty quickly we learned some things about that. Also, the other boxes that existed at the time, they didn't really have any sort of hint system, other than like people could join Facebook groups and talk about the cases and get hints there. But if people didn't know how to solve the problem or the puzzle, then like you didn't have any help. There was no assistance. So we actually were the first group to make a online option for getting hints there and not having to rely on other people solving those puzzles as well.
that's really cool too. It sounds like it was very interactive.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
and it sounds like you had said that there was a detective. So was that a bit of programming to be able to have the detective respond to things? Because I know you said you switched it from like, oh, wait 5 minutes to it happening really quickly. And how did you do that? How was that? What did you use to do that?
Yeah. So he was a type of chatbot essentially that I'd set up, and people would have to email him back and forth, and
Yeah.
he was set up in Microsoft Outlook.
Wow.
And
That's
so
really
it would hit Outlook, and then it would respond, was essentially the way I had it set up. And it took me ages to figure out how to do that. But that was the core of the business. And so once I figured out how to do that, And it, like, the process is real boring, so I won't bore you with the details of how you do that. But
Yeah.
once you figure it out and you get that system set up, it's easy enough to replicate. You just have to build the mystery and the story around kind of the way the chatbot itself worked, and we built the hint system and everything else into that as well. And so it was a lot of upfront ingenuity, but then once you've got it, you're set.
Okay.
So
Sounds like you were before your time, because those are like getting really popular now. So yeah,
right,
that's really cool. You were doing that back then. That's awesome. And I really love how you said too that you would change things on your fly for your on the fly for your customer. That's really nice that you were very flexible and open to suggestions, and I'm sure that helped a lot with just the long running of the game itself, that you were
absolutely.
very flexible and made changes on the fly. That's really cool.
Well, and it was important because, and this was an embarrassing mistake on our part. To make a
Love
long
those,
story
by the way.
short, what's that?
I love
Oh.
embarrassing mistakes. Those are awesome.
So, to make a long story short, we had a puzzle that was printed on the back of some poster or something. It was, a designed clue, and the puzzle involved having to cut this thing up and then rearrange it. The problem, and you rearranged it based on a lot of other hints and clues you got throughout the mystery. The problem was, I didn't cut the thing up when we got it from the printer, and double check and like triple check and make sure that, okay, it was printed correctly, this works appropriately. I just assumed because it worked when I had the file I sent them worked, we should be good. Come to find out, they had printed it backwards. And so when you do the puzzle, it's broken. It doesn't work. And
No.
so luckily, I always, especially at launch of a new case, would pay really, really, really close attention as people were going through and solving the puzzle. And within about the first 4 people, and we had about 500 subscribers. So within about the first 3, 4 people to complete the mystery, I'd already realized, oh no, the big main puzzle is broken. And so because people would let me know, and I was trying to monitor some of their feedback as they're talking to the detective, because I could go in and see their emails to him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, we can still salvage this. This will be fine. And so because we've been monitoring the feedback so closely, we're able to say, okay, we got an extra one of these here. Let's cut it up. Let's follow the clues. Let's see how we can actually fix this. And then we were able to say, okay, so following the clues, it actually should lead to this new location. That's fine. I can go in and edit this on the fly so that no other customers even realize that this thing was incorrect. And so before 10 people had actually gone through, it was already fixed, the new location was updated, and the problem was really solved. And so the first couple people, it
Yeah.
was, I'm so sorry, we'll give you a comp month,
Yeah.
whatever we need to make it right, because that was totally my bad. But yeah, by kind of monitoring it and listening to people's feedback, we're able to save that month, and nobody else even had any idea. Thank
Wow.
goodness.
Yeah, really quickly too. I mean, I'm hearing that you monitored it so closely that it only took a couple of people for you to find it and fix it. And
Yep.
had you had it on automatic and you were like, "Oh, it's fine, everything's good," then it would have gotten stuck somewhere, and you would have maybe found out later. So that's really cool that you were monitoring it that closely for feedback, which feedback can come in a lot of different ways, right? It could come in like, why isn't anybody doing it? Or
Yep.
but that's nice that you actually got, somebody said like, hey, this didn't work when I tried to do it, right? Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
it was so
Cool.
helpful.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you said you had 500 subscribers.
Yep,
Yeah.
we were busy.
Yeah,
We were
we
very,
were.
That
very,
sounds
very
so
busy.
cool. Did you ever have anybody that like kind of conflicting feedback where, like one person would say one way and another person would say, well, I like it this way. Did you ever have that? Yeah.
Yeah, we would. And sometimes people would talk about the difficulty of the cases, and we tried to keep it pretty even difficulty-wise from case to case, which is kind of hard to do, especially when you're trying to have a variety of different puzzles and trying to get puzzles that people enjoy doing. So we tried a bunch of different things and to try to kind of get people to be, excited about the cases. We had, at one point, we created a difficulty that was lower than the regular cases. And then we thought too, we had some teachers reach out to us and they were like, well, we might use something like this in a classroom. So it was kind of, you wanted to be on the alert for like different types of things that people were saying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but yeah, so with the difficulty especially, that was the one thing we got a lot of, like, some people thought it was easier, some people thought it was harder, and we would always try to, like, do our best. We have this binder, I think we still have it, that has, like, all the different types of puzzles that we have that we would put in cases. Yeah, and we would kind of keep the ones earmarked that were like, okay, we got a lot of positive comments about this one, so...
Or I will never use this puzzle again. People hate this one.
Yes. There's
so
a lot
great.
of that, but you definitely had to keep an ear out because everyone's preferences, they change. And a lot of the puzzle boxes too that exist that aren't ours, they focus on like, it's always murder based. Like they're always like, solve this murder, help us figure out who's killed so-and-so. And ours were basically always family friendly. I think kind of on accident rather than that we meant for that, but we were like, let's keep it lively and fun. So sometimes we had weird cases, like I think one took place at a putt-putt course.
Oh, yeah.
One of them was like a llama ate a diamond, but you had to figure out like where did the diamond go, So
that's really great.
Just kind of, we would talk about like what we wanted to do, like on the car rides to wherever we were going, just like trying to brainstorm things. And sometimes I feel like people thought, oh, these are really cool, and it's cool that it's family friendly. And other times I'm sure people were like, what were they thinking?
That's really great. I had an experience that I thought of as you were talking, Brandon, on the side, I'm also a personal trainer, and I work at this place, and we have these 20-minute workouts. And there was a client who, no kidding, after every workout would say, it wasn't long enough. And I'm just like, it's 20 minutes. And he'd be like, it was only 19 and a half minutes today. And it just did not matter. And there were certain exercises he didn't want to do. So I had to walk around and limit. So even at that, it was going to have to be a little bit shorter because he couldn't do every single exercise. So kind of like you said, all right, for that particular workout, when he walked out and he was like, it wasn't long enough, I couldn't do anything about it. But the next time he came in, I made sure to go over 1 minute. I was like, this guy is not going to be happy. I'm going to have to go over the time for him to be happy. We did every single challenge, every extra thing. I know he really likes, because he's a golfer, I know he really likes torso rotation. I made sure to throw that in as a bonus. And I think I even at the end said, I was like, hey, you started at 9 and it's 9:20, like 9:21, he could not complain when he walked out. He could not complain. And it felt really good. And my first response to this guy was, I'm not going to be able to help you. Just like, you're going to complain over 30 seconds, But after that, I was like, nope, I'm going to have to go an extra minute and a half and make sure this customer is happy. And it worked out. It really worked out. So I love that you said that you guys would sit and think about the comment and say, how can we do something about this? How can we incorporate this? You get bonus points for that. That's awesome. Because I think a lot of people will just say, I can't do anything with this. This is bad feedback. Can't do anything with this. But it's really, really cool to really sit and dissect something and say, what can I do with this feedback? Can I do anything? And that was really, really cool that you kind of found some way that you could use that feedback. So I love that. That's really cool. Thumbs up. Yay. So let's talk more about like the internal workings of the company. I know you are a married couple, and that in and of itself, there's a lot of feedback going on there, but it's also really challenging to run a business as a couple. And I thought it'd be fun to get some of your thoughts on how that worked. How is it? I know so you guys kind of separated out the activities, like the to-do list for the company. Is that right?
Yeah, we kind of have different styles about how we approach things, but we each have strengths in different areas. So we were like, well, we might as well use that and do things to our best abilities. So Brand is a really good writer, so he would write the stories, and he knew all of the technical stuff for like setting up Sullivan, the detective, and he would put everything together. And then I guess at this point, I'm a professional puzzler, right? So I would do the puzzles and test those.
Okay.
And when Brand had written a book before we started Sleuth Kings, I was his editor because we really couldn't afford to get a professional editor. But I did okay in school, so Brand was like, "Okay, you can edit this for me." And so it was kind of back then that I had to learn, like, it's not going to get better unless I give good constructive feedback. So I really had to get over like the Midwestern mindset of like, "Oh no, it's fine, it's great." I had to kind of break through that and be like, well, I liked this. I didn't like this. Here's how I think you could fix it. But ultimately, we kind of had the understanding that like it's Brand's job to fix it somehow, and I get to give the feedback. So, so we really try to complement each other well in that regard. So we kind of already had that set up when we started this as like, okay, well, he'll do the creative parts of writing it, and then I just have to give like my honest gut feedback of like how I would view it if I was somebody just playing the game.
Wow.
And it's super important from the person receiving the feedback. So like she would give me her honest feedback.
Yeah.
And it's super important not to take anything personally and not to take any offense to anything. Because there was more than once that I would put a case together with the stories and kind of a rough draft of puzzles, have her work through it, and I've got 20, 30 hours into it at this point, and she would come back and say, "You were off on this one. I don't know what you were thinking, but this doesn't work because of this, and this. I don't know if you can salvage this one or not." And sometimes I could go through and salvage it. Other times it was, well, back to the drawing board. Let's try a new one. But at the end of the day, it was really important, especially creatively, to not take offense to any of it. She's not saying anything bad about me. She's trying to help me. And so, I always approach everything with a thankful attitude, be it writing or anything else. If somebody's taking the time to give me any kind of feedback or help me in any way, I want to come at it with gratitude. And frankly, even if somebody's not necessarily coming at something to help me, I still want to try to approach them with gratitude, because there's something you can take away and people respond much better to. Thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate, whatever it is you're doing for me, as opposed to kind of a negative attitude. And you end up just with much better interpersonal relationships with that regard as well. But yeah, back to accepting feedback. I never ever tried to get defensive about anything. It's always, okay, objectively, I accept it. And sometimes maybe I would disagree because, I feel like this story could work. I see what you're saying. Let's make some tweaks to it and see if I can fix this, because I feel like there is some value to, say, this story. And so we go back to the drawing board, talk it over, and drill down a little deeper into what is it you really didn't like about this? Do you feel like this was acceptable? But, it comes back to her willingness to give honest feedback and my willingness to not be defensive at all about anything. And that dynamic is really what made the entire business work.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said you set it up that way. It was like predetermined that, that Brandon was going to write and Ren was going to give that feedback. So she was ultimately the first customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
She was always ultimately the first customer. So she had to see it from an objective perspective, right? And, from the customer's point of view. And then she had to tell you if it was going to work or not, because if she didn't, then all the cases would have been like really confusing and maybe not even solvable. And so that's really cool that you guys had that system before you even published it. So that's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's really great. I love that.
And we're still married, so.
I was going to say that too, that not only did you have to, give that feedback, but you also live together, so yeah. So, so that's really cool that you made it through all of that. That's really cool. How many cases were there?
I was trying to do the math earlier because I knew we were coming on this, and there was over 50 cases by the time it was all said and done.
I think I want to say 56 or so.
Maybe, yeah. There was. I don't remember all the stories, to be honest. She didn't remember them the next month. She's like, "Oh, why don't we do something like this?" I'm like, "We did that 2 months ago."
It's crazy how fast you have to move to the next story. So you're thinking about okay, what can we do next? And you're like, I totally would forget. I had maybe after the 6th or 7th case, I would just completely forget what we had done unless I really liked the story.
That's cool.
But even then, I wouldn't remember what number. I'd be like, which one was that? Oh
yeah. How long did it take on average for somebody to solve it?
They were designed to take about 2 to 3 hours. So it was kind of a good evening project. Or if you're having friends over, you can kind of do it over dinner and then a little bit of an after type of thing. And so, and then the rookie detectives, which I think you touched on earlier, the easier cases were designed to take about an hour to get through.
Okay.
So that if you wanted a more laid back kind of gathering with friends, you could do it in not a whole lot of time without paying a ton of attention. Was kind of the thought process there. So
I like that it's called the Rookie Detective. That's really fun. That's really great.
Yeah, it was fun. We were like, "Oh, what can we call this? Oh, we've got it." So
that's cool. So, Ren, tell me a little bit about what you're doing now, and give some information about your company and your website. And, just for the podcast so people know what you do and where they can reach you if they need your services.
Yeah. So after we ran Sleuth Kings for so long, we kind of both decided we really enjoy running a business. So we knew that we wanted to keep doing that and helping out in the best way that we could. And so after that, I started pursuing accounting as a career. I'd kind of done a lot of accounting adjacent things in my whole career. So I thought that this was a really good fit for me. So now I am an accountant at Bright Road Financial Services. Our website is Bright Road Accounting.
Nice.
But we provide accounting and bookkeeping services geared towards small businesses and nonprofits.
Yay.
I also worked for a nonprofit in the daytime when I was coming home and working for Sleuth Kings at night. So I'm really familiar with both running a small business, the back end of that, and also with nonprofits. So it's this seems like a really good market that I can help in. I can do a lot of good in. So, so that's where I ended up now. And I'm happy to be on this journey as well. This is another exciting time in life. Definitely a different kind of chapter than
for sure. Yeah.
But still something that is fulfilling and that I feel like I'm really helping with. So that's good.
And you are solving cases every day, I'm sure.
That's true. There are a lot of hidden numbers, and I'm going to find them.
Right. Yes, and Ren is my bookkeeper, and I would totally recommend her. So, absolutely. So glad to share your web information, your information with everybody. Let me ask you, did you ever have any upset customers?
Oh my goodness, yeah. You would get people upset for anything you could imagine and about 10 other things that you can't because yeah, at the end of the day it's a retail customer service type of business
Yeah.
and you get all kinds and that's totally fine. I always found that trying to listen to their feedback, even when they're coming at you negative and angrily, trying to listen and understand what it is they're saying. Ultimately saying, not just what's written in their
Yeah.
email, and approaching them with an air of gratitude for reaching out to you, even if they're angry and hostile. Like, thank you for taking the time to let me know that this was an issue and not
Yeah.
just canceling and not saying anything. Like, I legitimately appreciate you reaching out and letting me know about this problem and then working to try to make it right. A lot of people by the end of that interaction would say, thank you so much. I'm going to tell my friends that they need to come check out your service because you're,
Nice.
you're actually so nice and responsive and you legitimately care. And so a lot of people I found approach things at like a level 10 expecting the absolute worst,
Yeah.
expecting either to be ignored or talked down to or somebody on the internet
Yeah.
is
That's
going to come
crazy.
back and argue with them.
Yeah.
And they were just so pleasantly surprised when you come at them thankful for the feedback and willing to work with them to try to make them happy. That it absolutely flips the interaction they anticipated. It flips that on its head, and they end up leaving, happy at the end of the day. And that's really what, especially in like an entertainment business, that's what it was
Yeah.
about at the end of the day. And really, any customer facing business, which every business essentially is, you want your customers to be happy because a happy customer is a repeat customer and like you want to be proud of what you're doing and you're not doing something so that people will not like it and say you did a bad job. And so kind of accepting that feedback and approaching it again, not taking anything personally,
Mhm.
kind of like we discussed earlier with some of the back and forth feedback, and just learning what you can and thanking them at the end of the day. I find to be really effective.
Yeah, it's surprising how many of those negative interactions can really turn into something positive by the end of them if you just approach it with the kind of mindset that like, thank you for the feedback. I'm grateful for your input on this. Otherwise you
Yeah.
won't know how to move forward and like ultimately like bad, negative feedback is good feedback if it's constructive.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very interesting to think about that you got your story was horrible, right? And then you have your story was missing one, two, three, four, five, right? And you can do a lot more with what your story was missing versus your story was horrible. So that you dug in, and even asked them, like, well, you're saying it's horrible. What's it missing? You know what? Tell us more. That's really great that you were able to get that feedback and turn those negatives into positives. That's so cool. You guys should always run small businesses because we need more people like that running businesses that are customer facing and are faced with people that might be upset or frustrated, and you never know what happened during their day. It could be something completely separate from your services. It could be something else going on in their life. So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
really cool. Thank you for that story about dealing with upset customers. Thank you for that. Well, I think that was a really awesome interview. I mean, so many nuggets, so many great things came out of that. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with Sleuth Kings and how feedback changed and helped your business and how impactful that was. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you
And
for having us
I'll
on. This is great.
Thank you.